It was on a dreary night of November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. With an anxiety that almost amounted to agony, I collected the instruments of life around me that I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing that lay at my feet. It was already 1 a.m. The rain pattered dismally against the panes, and my candle was nearly burnt out, when, by the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, I saw the dull, yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. How can I describe my emotion at this catastrophe, or how delineate the wrench whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavoured to form? His limbs were in proportion, and I had selected his features as beautiful, beautiful, great God! His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was of a lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of a pearly whiteness, but those luxuriance only formed in more horrid contrast with his watery eyes, that seemed almost of the same colour as the dun white sockets in which they were set, his shrivelled complexion, and his straight black lips. The different accidents of life are not so changeable as the feelings of human nature. I had worked hard for nearly 2 years with the sole purpose of infusing life into an intimate body. For this, I had deprived myself of rest and health. I had desired it with an ardour that far exceeded moderation, but now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Unable to endure the aspect of the being I had created, I rushed out of the room and continued a long time traversing my bedchamber, unable to compose my mind to sleep. At length, lassitude succeeded to the tumult I had before endured, and I threw myself on the bed in my clothes, endeavouring to seek a moment of forgetfulness. But it was in vain. I slept, indeed, but I was disturbed by the wildest dreams. I thought I saw Elizabeth, in the bloom of heath, walking in the streets of Ingolstadt. Delighted and surprised, I embraced her. But as I imprinted the first kiss upon her lips, they became livid with the hue of death. Her features appeared to change, and I thought I held the corpse of my dead mother in my arms. A shroud enveloped her form, and I saw the grave worms crawling in the folds of the flannel. I started from sleep with horror. A cold dew covered my forehead, my teeth chattered, and my every limb convulsed, when by the dim and yellow light of the moon, as it forced its way through the window shutters, I beheld the wretch, the miserable monster whom I had created. He held up the curtain of the bed, and his eyes, if eyes they may be called, were fixed on me. His jaw opened, and he muttered some inarticulate sounds, while a grin wrinkled his cheeks. He might have spoken, but I did not hear. One hand was stretched out, seemingly to detain me, but I escaped and rushed downstairs. I took refuge in the courtyard belonging to the house which I inhabited, where I remained for the rest of the night. Walking up and down in the greatest agitation, listening attentively, catching the fearing each sound as if it were to announce the approach of the demoniacal corpse of which I had so miserably given life. Oh, no mortal could suppose to support the horror of that countenance. A mummy again endured with animation could not be so hideous as that wretch. I'd gazed upon him while unfinished. He was ugly then, but when those muscles and joints were rendered capable of motion, it became a thing even Dante could not have conceived. I passed the night wretchedly. Sometimes my pulse beat so quickly and hardly that I felt the palpitation of every artery. At others, I nearly sank into the ground through languor and extreme weakness. Mingled with this horror, I felt the bitterness of disappointment. Dreams that had been my food and pleasant rest for so long, a space were now become a hell to me. And the change was so rapid, the overthrow so complete. Morning, dismal and wet, at length dawned and discovered to my sleepless and aching eyes the church of Ingolstadt. Its white steeple and clock were indicated the 6th hour. The porter opened the gates of the court, which had that night been my asylum, and I issued into the streets, pacing them with quick steps, as if I sought to avoid the wretch who I feared every turning of the street would present to my view. I did not dare return to the apartment in which I inhabited, but I felt impelled to hurry on. although drenched by the rain which poured from a black and comfortless sky. I continued walking in this manner for some time, endeavouring my bodily exercise to ease the load that weighed upon my mind. I traversed the streets without any clear conception of where I was or what I was doing. My heart palpitated in the sickness of fear, and I hurried on with irregular steps, not daring to look about me. Like one who on a lonely road doth walk in fear and dread, and having once turned around walks on, and turns no more his head, because he knows a frightful fiend doth close behind him tread. Continuing thus, I came at length opposite to the inn at which the various diligences and carriages usually stopped. Here I paused, I knew not why, but I remained some minutes with my eyes fixed on a coach that was coming towards me from the other end of the street. As it drew nearer, I observed that it was the Swiss diligence. It stopped just where I was standing, and on the door being opened, I perceived Henry Clerval, who, on seeing me, instantly sprang out. "My dear Frankestein," exclaimed he, "how glad I am to see you! How fortunate that you should be here at this very moment of my alighting!" Nothing could equal my delight on seeing Clerval. His presence brought back to me my thoughts of my father, Elizabeth, and all those good scenes of home so dear to my recollection. I grasped his hand, and in a moment forgot my horror and misfortune. I felt suddenly, and for the first time during many months, calm and serene joy. I welcomed my friend, therefore, in the most cordial manner, and we walked towards my college. Clerval continued talking for some time about our mutual friends and his own good fortune in being permitted to come to Ingolstadt. "You may easily believe," said he, "how great was the difficulty to persuade my father that all necessary knowledge was not comprised in the noble art of bookkeeping. And indeed, I believe I left him incredulous to the last, for his constant answer to my unwearied entreaties was the same as that the Dutch schoolmaster, the Vicar of Wakefield. I have 10,000 florins a year without Greek. I eat heartily without Greek." But his affection for me at length overcame his dislike of learning, and he has permitted me to undertake a voyage of discovery into the land of knowledge. "It gives me greatest delight to see you, but tell me how you left my father, brothers, and Elizabeth." "Very well, and very happy. Only a little uneasy that they hear from you so seldom. By the by, I mean to lecture you a little upon their account to myself, but my dear Frankestein," continued he, stopping short and gazing full in my face, "I did not before remark how very ill you appear, so thin and pale. You look as though you'd been watching for several nights." "You have guessed right. I have lately been so deeply engaged in one occupation, I have not allowed myself."